Hello everyone, welcome to episode 2 of Suits Goes Live, Friends. Once again, my name is Cristobal.
When we need to restart, him closing the laptop cost.
What?
Sorry, all I do is peek. Alright.
Is this still recording?
Yeah, it is.
Hello everyone, welcome to episode 2 of Suits Goes Live, Friends. Once again, my name is Cristobal, and my co-host Sean and I are joined today by Noel and Nicole. And today we will be
Alright, let's go again.
Alright, let's go again.
Sorry. Okay, let's go again.
Wait, don't you need to get the theme song ready?
I'm not. What?
No, we're not playing the theme song.
I thought you said you're playing
No,
the theme
we are
song.
not.
Is it theme song?
There's no theme song.
What the fuck?
Hello everyone, welcome to episode 2 of Suits Goes Live, Friends. Once again, my name is Cristobal, and my co-host Sean and I are joined today by Noel and Nicole. And today we'll be talking about forming friendships in law school. Would y'all like to introduce yourselves and maybe share how law school has been for you in general, and maybe on a scale of 1 to 10, how you would rate your experience so far?
Okay, so yeah, hi guys, I'm Noel, and I'm currently a they call it a rising year 2 student. And I guess so far if I were to rate my experiences in law school, it would be like an 8, I guess. 2 points off for the 2 semesters I've been here. Yeah, otherwise it's been great.
Okay, hi, I'm Nicole. My general experience in law school has been a bit of a roller coaster, I guess. But, I mean, made it to the end of Sem 2, so it should be okay. Yeah, I think on a scale of 1 to 10, I'll probably give it a 7.5. Yeah. Not too bad, not too shabby.
Setting the bar low.
Yeah.
Sean, how has it been for you on a scale of 1 to 10?
How's it been for you, Chris? How is law school been for you? While Sean is thinking of his answer. Oh,
I think for me, probably about a 7, 7.5.
7?
Yeah.
it just gets lower.
Yeah.
It's just getting lower.
Probably like 8 or 9 now.
Yeah, annoying. So today's episode is about friends, forming friends, and I guess maintaining friendships in law school. So I guess the first kind of obvious question would be, where did you guys find your friends in law school? So that may be like orientation, FOCC, in class, or any of those things.
Okay, I can go first. So for me, I think mostly it was like 2 classes, and also because I stay in like an RC, like I stay in CAPT, and I think there's a very like, small number of law students who are there. So I think there's about like there are 8 of us in CAPT now for like year ones. So I think like staying together with people and like seeing them every day and taking a bus together, like you kind of spend a lot of time together, so you kind of inevitably get very close. Yeah, and I think also another group would probably be my like LARC class. Yeah, because we also spend a lot of time together.
Thanks, Nicole.
I think for me, like, I realized that my friends kind of come from like not just all over the place, I guess. So like I started out like I guess in orientation, where I did like floats for F.R.I.E.N.D.S, and then I made like my first, so that was my first exposure to law school, and it was a pretty fun one. So like shout out guys, try to join F.R.I.E.N.D.S this year, it's fun. Anyways, then I joined FOCC also. Then I made a bunch of friends there as well, and like as Nicole said just now, like you do make some friends from your classes as well. If your class is close, like sometimes you spend time like maybe just outside class, then you just hang around with them with the class, like hang out at the lounge and everything like that. Then you kind of just get closer lah, cause after you spend time together in class. Yeah, and I think in general most people in law school kind of make friends. Like they're usually the closest out of all the modules. They're usually the closest to their LARC class also, because like they spend the most time together, and like LARC is at a pretty iconic time. It's like at night, so like people usually get close when they attend physical classes together. Yeah, and also because LARC is very work heavy, so like you kind of spend a lot of time doing work together.
Trauma bonding.
Yeah.
Trauma bonding together. Yeah.
Sean, you're quite close to your LARC class, right?
Relatively lah. I'm probably more close to my OG and to FOCC than my LARC class, but
Okay, so do you guys find that over the course of being in law school and I guess making friends, do you find that people are generally very friendly and open, or do you think that maybe because law school has this kind of competitive edge to it, that it's kind of quote unquote hindered, like I guess forming friendships? Do you guys find that that's the case? Or?
I would say, since this is an orientation podcast, right? I would say that during orientation, there's generally like people are generally more open to making friends because like everybody's off the new beginning. So like people generally want to like, they are more open, and they are generally looking for like a friend group to form and like, I don't know, to study and whatnot. So like, to slot in some advice to the freshies, like, I think orientation is a really good time to make friends because, like as I said earlier, people are generally open to forming new friendships and stuff like that. Because like, especially once the sem starts, right? Then like, you guys go full swing into the lessons, then everybody is just stoning and vibing their way through. So like, for me, what I realized was that once the sem began, then it was slightly harder to make friends, especially if like everybody's very dead in class and everything like that. So treasure orientation is a good time to make friends.
But Noel, you didn't participate in law camp, right?
Oh yeah, for me, I didn't participate in law camp at first because I didn't have, law camp was online during our year, and like I didn't have a space to Zoom at that time because my house was under like renovation. So like, I only joined during Freshers Week, which moved online also during the COVID time. Yeah, so like for me, my first group of friends were really from like orientation for right and flag, namely floats. Yeah, and like because like we were a very small group because it was kind of a last minute thing. So like, I guess because of the size, then we bonded like quite well also. So I made like pretty good friends during that time as well. So yeah, my point still stands that orientation is a very good avenue to make friends. Yeah.
Thanks. Do you feel the same way, Nicole? You attend orientation?
Yeah, I did, but and I think like during law camp there were a bunch of like physical like meetups, if I remember correctly. Or I don't know if that was like just for my.
I think OGs usually like arrange like meetups.
Yeah, cause like our OGs they grouped us based on where we live, so we all could like meet in a very like good like convenient place. Yeah, cause I live in the east, so all my OG mates live in the east as well. Yeah, but I think like halfway through the restrictions kicked in, so then we couldn't meet anymore, and I think not having that like physical ability to like meet up kind of like hindered maybe like like stronger friendships being formed at that point. Yeah.
So actually, are y'all close with your OGs from orientation?
For me, I'm okay. I would say that I'm close to like certain friends in my OG. Like I mean, like sometimes I play like frisbee with some of them. Then like one of them is in my LARC class as well. So like I'll say a select few people lah. But I think like, but I wouldn't attribute OGs not being close to like the nature of orientation also, because like, gotta keep in mind that for our year orientation was online. So meeting through the screen will be quite awkward when you guys see in real life. But things are better this year because orientation is physical. So finally physical. So the freshies this year, I would say, are really lucky. So I think that it will really be quite a good opportunity for you guys to like, you know, make new friends and get closer.
Yeah. Actually, Sean, your OG is quite well knit. So I guess, do you have any advice on how to, I guess, keep that friendship going even when like the sem starts and like going into year one?
I mean, I guess in a way that I was quite fortunate to have an OG that had very good chemistry, because on the first day, as usual, like things were very awkward because number one is new people, so it will always be awkward, right? But number two is that it was online, so that adds a natural barrier where, let's say you guys want to meet up, you know, for the first time, it's a bit weird in a sense, like what Noel said just now. So I was quite fortunate in the sense that number one, my OGs were amazing because they literally told us, come to, you know, one of the OGL's houses and then we'll just whatever we'll watch a movie or something. And my OG was also quite responsive to that in the sense that most of us went, maybe only like three or four people out of like 10 people didn't go. So it was majority of the OG that went. We also actively, like each of us also actively asked others to go and eat like dinner and lunch and whatever, and study in school. Like the first few weeks of Sem 1, we were all studying together, and even in Sem 2 we were also studying together. I mean, of course, as we make more friends, we would study less often, but the tradition of Thursday suppers is still going on. So in that sense, yes, I was very fortunate, but I'm sure that in most cases, if you actively put in the effort and try and get people to eat with you, I mean, not necessarily your OG, even your classmates or your LARC mates or anyone you meet in school, can be even your interest group mates or whatever, as long as you're friendly and nice and not a nasty person in general, I'm sure that if you put in the effort and get try and get people to go out, you'll make good friends.
Yeah, actually, I think Sean touched on this point just now also, but like building on it, right? Like he mentioned about how like they're very like-minded. So like, I think really like what matters the most is not really like, oh, we are from the same OG or we are from the same orientation activity, for example. Like I think that like you guys really start to form friend groups when you meet like-minded people, and it might be kind of a subgroup among your OG or your orientation group or whatever, and that's totally fine as well. So like I would say like if I were to give like a general word of advice, it just be to like put yourself out there. Like it's orientation, like people getting to know each other during this period. So like put yourself out there, try to join more activities, and like you never know, you guys might meet like people that you click with, and these people will generally form a strong foundation for your starting out law school and all that. Yeah. So if you guys can find like-minded people and meet like-minded people during orientation, I think that'll be a huge plus. Yeah.
Even if you don't find sort of like-minded people, or you don't find them right like straight out the bat, you can still make friends who are like slightly more than acquaintances, I guess. And it is always nice to have someone you recognize in law school, even though you may not necessarily say, okay, we are besties, or whatever. It's still nice to have that person in the hallway like, hey, how are you, that kind of thing. Yeah, I think it's very underrated to have at the very bare minimum someone who can say, hi, how's your day, or like, hi, how's it going, that kind of thing. Or you can ask questions for studies, for your mods, etc. Yeah.
I think I think this is more in the context of like orientation also. I mean, I think it's quite easy to make like very snap judgments on people based on like orientation as like a first impression. So I guess just like something else will be maybe keep an open mind to like people and see how they I don't know, like see how things go as time passes. Maybe like your first impression of them may be a bit different from who they truly are. Yeah.
Yeah, generally during orientation, like I think this ties into to an earlier question also, but like during orientation for our batch at least, like I realized that a lot of people were really like making an effort to socialize and make new friends. So that's like really good because like people are really open to like forming new friendships, I guess. But with that also comes like what Nicole mentioned, the tendency to, for lack of a better phrase, put up a front and like it comes with putting yourself out there. So like maybe like being somebody they are not, something like that. So like I will agree that you don't make snap judgments too fast because you don't know what people really are like as a person. So you might be pleasantly surprised, like maybe somebody that you don't really vibe with at the start, like becomes really close to you, and stuff like that. So yeah.
I guess now that we're on this topic of orientation and how we've mentioned how our orientation was mostly online, and I guess we've also mentioned that because orientation this year is going to be physical, as Law Camp was physical and Freshers Week is also going to be physical, and as OGCs who have planned so far orientation and Freshers Week in particular, how do you guys I guess have like hope for the freshies?
I mean definitely there'll be like, we do have high hopes that like this year, and we hope that the freshies this year would be able to get closer to each other, because I mean for Freshers Week at least, like when we plan the games and activities, we plan them to facilitate as much bonding within the OGs as possible. I won't say too much right now. You guys can experience it during Freshers Week itself. But yeah, so hopefully through the games, you guys can work together and like get closer together. And we hope and we believe that we believe that through this physical experience, it'll be a lot better than an online orientation. Yeah.
Actually, how has being a part of Freshers Week, would you say that has helped you form like greater friendships? Because for me, majority of my friends come from like being in FOCC and being a part of Freshers Week. And it was also one of the reasons that I joined Freshers Week, was because I was looking for more people that I could interact with that's outside of just my classes. And so actually that's worked out really well for me. But what about the
are you
rest of
sure?
you? Am I sure? One friends with Sean.
Yeah, no, but I think definitely lah. Because for our comm we are very like closely bonded, and like Sean said, we all happen to be very like-minded people. So like when we work together, number one, it's pretty efficient, and like number two, like we are able to have fun outside as well. And like I always say this to my comm, but like it's very different to have a comm that works well together. That's already an achievement in itself. But an even higher level than that is to have a comm which you enjoy going to meetings together, which make like work not feel like a drag. So like, yeah, it really goes back to the earlier point about meeting like-minded people. So like, if you got people that you get along really well with, then I would say that the work really gets easier lah. It gets more enjoyable also.
Nicole, how has working under Noel been? Do you find meetings are a drag or are they fun?
I think you give context first.
What do you mean? What
like, how you,
I just don't.
I mean,
Give me up. No, okay, no, I mean, like for the, like, cause I'm in the night games call, right? So like 3 of us were all from like the same LARC class. So I feel like me, you kind of, yeah. Then like, I feel like we really had kind of like a friendship going on. So I guess it wasn't, why you make that face? You can't, yeah,
see
so,
the face.
yeah, they can't see the face, right?
Stop teasing me. I'm not making any face.
Right. Yeah, so like 3 of us really like kind of friends lah. So I think it wasn't too much of a drag. Yeah. But I think like meeting all the other day games people as well has been like really fun. I'm in this like event planning committee. So it's called like Student Affairs Committee. So what we do for CAPT is like we just plan like student welfare activities, and they're just like games or just bonding activities for the whole of CAPT. And I think like joining this comm has really like helped me to reach out to people who are beyond like my house. So like in CAPT we have houses also, so it's every like 3 floors. Yeah, so people tend to generally be closer to their house because that's where you interact with the most people. But I think that being in this comm has helped me to kind of like expand outside of that as well. Yeah, I think going through like hardships, like in terms of like planning and like overcoming like problems and then thinking of solutions together, like going through all that like really does help to like help you form like bonds with other people. And I think something that's important is that like if you're doing like all these things, like you should also kind of like enjoy it at the same time. Like don't do it just for like the position or like the like to add something nice on your resume. Like just do it for the sake of like enjoyment. Yeah.
So you've also touched a bit about LARC friendships. So I guess it's kind of like a more quote unquote like stereotype that people get closer to their LARC class. So I guess would y'all find that to be correct? Like,
Okay, I think I need to contextualize this by saying that because like usually the seniors enforce, like not enforce, sorry, but like the seniors kind of like paint this picture that they're all really close to their LARC class. I think it's because like we need to keep in mind that for our seniors batch, right, most of the classes were, I mean,
Online.
their uni semesters were under COVID, a very different COVID landscape than what we have now. So like most of their classes were online, and the only physical class that they had, if I'm not wrong, was LARC. So like for them, the only physical interaction they had with students in law school were from their LARC class. So they were naturally a lot closer to their LARC class. Yeah, I think in spite of that, I think there is still some truth to the fact that you will be closer friends with your LARC class, because like as mentioned earlier, like you guys attend like, I mean, some of you guys will attend like late night lessons together, and just a heads up, the LARC workload is pretty heavy, so you guys will spend quite a lot of time doing work together and things like that. So like it's very research heavy. Yeah, so like I'll say there is truth to the fact that we do tend to get closer to our LARC classmates. Yeah, Nicole happens to be in my LARC class also. was in my LARC class this year. So you can back me
Yeah.
up, or you can
I do
disagree
agree.
with my point.
I do agree. Yeah, I think also cause LARC is a year long mod, and I think in comparison to like contracts, which is like like once every 2 weeks,
Yeah.
like like LARC is twice every week. So it's you really like the face-to-face time you get is really a lot. Yeah. But I think also like something Sean said just now about like putting in like the effort to continue to like maintain friendships. Like so even though like you have luck and it's twice a week and it's something scheduled, like it doesn't mean that you'll automatically be close in itself. Like I think you also have to make effort, like maybe after class go for like dinners or whatever. Yeah. I mean you don't really get to like bond and talk within class, like class time itself, because you'll be talking about like statutes. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah.
Memos.
Yeah.
So, but how about like your other classes, which I guess maybe might not meet as often, or I guess bigger in size? Have you all found that making friends in those classes, so like TOTS or contracts or SLIC and ILT, has that been, I guess, harder?
I think it depends, because like it also depends on the kind of people you have in your classes. Because like let's say if you meet like a class with like, there always be people in every batch that are like kind of like social butterflies, you know. Then they're like really outgoing and they like really kind of like make an attempt to gel the class together. Yeah, so like for me, for example, like I was actually pretty close to my Sem 1 TOTS class, because there were a lot of similar people lah. Then like all of us like they're kind of crazy over table tennis. So like we were just like after TOTS tutorials, we just go to the lounge, then we like play table tennis for a few hours on a Friday afternoon. And after that we just chill together and go back and stuff like that. So like yeah, it's definitely possible to make friends within your other tutorial groups.
Yeah, I will agree
think
with
so,
that.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like, I think in all my mods, like, I at least have like one friend, which I didn't know like before that class started. So I don't know, like, you can just sit next to somebody and then you just like start talking. Like for my contracts class,
Yeah.
like the friend that I made was because we were both like late for the bus that day. Like we were late for class because of the bus, so we ran together and we ended up sitting together. And that's how we became friends. So like it's really quite like I think everybody's very open to making friends as long as you like you reach out and take the first step to like say hi or like talk about how you're drowning in work or something like that.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
I
like
think,
everybody can relate to it.
I
Yeah.
think trauma bonding is a real
Yeah,
thing.
it's really true.
Like I've known people who made friends just through like maybe they go to a tutorial, then they're like, hey bro, do you know what the tutor just said, or like do you understand what he's saying, like, or like stuff like, have you done this reading, like, and that's literally the conversation starter. Like they've never talked before, but they just kind of text each other during class and like they just kind of like hit it off from there. So like yeah, in a sense, like it's like what Nicole said earlier, like when you go through hardships, and law school has a lot of that.
Too much actually.
Yeah, too much of that. But yeah, when you go through hardships, like it forges stronger bonds also lah. Then and like yeah, when people are suffering together, they tend to like open up to each other.
Since we are at this point, we can also talk about the, I guess, stereotype of there being a lot of like quote unquote snakes in law school.
Yes.
So I guess so far in your experiences, have you guys found that law school is really like full of like snakes?
Okay, like for me, I really don't think I've met any people who are like super, like the stereotype snake. Like the people I've met in law school are all super helpful and like friendly. Like for like I mean the CAP law people, like we actually like discuss like tutorials and stuff in someone's suite before like our contracts before contracts. So I feel like everybody's like pretty willing to help as long as you are equally like receptive and like open to sharing like your answers and like thoughts as well.
Like it's a group based
Yeah,
thing,
yeah,
it's
it's
not
like a
like
group
one
thing.
one person passing
Yeah,
you
yeah,
all the
yeah.
notes, right?
Yeah, it's like discussion.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think everybody thinks like everybody knows that we can always like learn from each other. Like and I think cause law has like no set answer. So I think that's like it's really important to discuss with other people and see like different things that you may have missed out on as well.
I think it's also very important to distinguish between what a quote unquote snake is versus some form of healthy competition, because I think we
Yeah.
might also be confused sometimes. I guess because law is a very competitive module that people are genuinely quite focused about their grades. So sometimes someone may say something, I mean, it may be taken out of context. Yeah.
Yeah, I think like because of the nature of the course we're studying, right, and the inherently like adversarial kind of role that we play, like inherently there will be quite there'll be a pretty substantial number of very competitive people in a competitive environment. But it's not to mean that these people are snakes also, because like as Chris said, there's a distinction between the two. And like I think generally in law school, like people are very willing to form an opinion and defend it. And healthy debate is different from snaking people out per se. So like it's a very different thing. And in fact, like being open to discussion and being very willing to challenge other people's viewpoints can go very far in helping you academically in law school. Yeah, so there's definitely a distinction there between snakes and healthy competition. Yeah.
Yeah, just to add on what Noel has said about it, I think healthy competition and healthy debate can actually help you make even more friends, because what you'll find tends to happen is that in class you try and defend an opinion, someone else tries to defend your opinion, and then both of you after class will be like, hey, why do you think this way? It's a lot more collaborative than it seems, because both of you are trying to find out, look, what are the reasons why the other person believes in what he says, and what are the potential weaknesses in the position that I have taken. And this sort of generates discussion and generates healthy like debate slash both of you talking about the mod or the subject, and this inherently just generates friendships and relationships. And I think it is important to note that what happens in the classroom should stay in the classroom. Just because somebody disagrees or somebody shoots down your opinion doesn't mean that it is personal. It just means that they disagree, and talk about it lah. It's no hard feelings. I think another good example would be for LARC, because the final sort of exam for LARC is a mood where you go up against one of your batch mates, and more often than not you'll find that you may or may not go up against one of your good friends. Like for example, I went up against one of my closer friends in law school, and both of us from the start agreed that, look, it is for competition, we are not going to hold back against each other, we're not going to go easy on each other, but whatever happens in the moot court will stay in the moot court, because it's competition and it's for the sport of it. And yeah, so it was more fun lah.
I think on that note also, like again, because of the very debate nature of law school and law in general, like there'll be people who speak very aggressively when debating about problem, and most of the time, from what I've observed, it's not really because they want to put you down or they want to prove that they're better than you. It's really for what my friend likes to call academic discourse. Yeah.
I think a better way to put it is just in the heat of the moment they may say something that they don't mean lah.
Kind of.
Or
I
they
would say
come
more
off
of more of their tone in general can be very aggressive.
Yeah.
But it's because they're really trying to push you to your limits and grow together lah. So it's like it's not really. It's important to be able to not take these arguments, debates personally.
Yeah. I think that what we're saying is that, or rather, we are not saying that there are no, sort of quote unquote snakish people in law school. There definitely are, and to be honest, anywhere you go, there are going to be people like that. Especially in another law school that we shall not name, but in general, at least from my experience in NUS, have I met such people? Yes, definitely. Have I met multiple such people? Yes, but overwhelmingly they are the minority, and the only reason why it may seem that there are a lot of people is because the minority, it's sort of like a loud minority that generates this kind of rumors and this kind of discussion about this sort of people, and therefore it may seem like there are a lot of people, but if you listen carefully, generally speaking, you're always talking about the same group of people who behave in this sort of manner, and you'll find that overwhelmingly law school shouldn't or doesn't have a lot of snakes. It's just that the nicer people are generally quiet, and the quote unquote snakish people are generally more, for the lack of a better word, noisy.
I think like what Sean said, like everywhere you go, there'll be like people who are maybe snakish and that kind of thing, but at the risk of sounding very politically correct, generally the people that I've met so far in law school, we're all like really open to helping each other, like kind of just struggling through, like getting through the SEM together. Like most of my friends say like people here are too tired to be snakish. Yeah, so
Yeah,
like
we have the energy.
yeah, we really don't have the energy. So maybe yeah, so like it's really been quite a wholesome environment, I would say, barring like I don't know like barring like as Sean said the minority, but then again that's life, right? Like when you go into the working world and everything, there always be these type of people present. So like, it's more important to learn how to deal with this, these presences and work around it, you know. And once you find a group of people who you are close to, who you can trust, like this shouldn't be a very big problem to you guys already.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think having friends-in-law is quite important. It's also something that I guess I struggled a little bit with in the beginning because my OG was a bit more on the quiet side. But I think for me, I've realized that having people that I guess you can struggle with through law school is very important, and it really just keeps you going. I think, yeah, as someone who has a lot of friends outside law, it's like not really the same, even if they're going to uni. Yeah, because the struggle is not the same.
Yeah.
Okay, but I said that.
But then,
Yeah, I would say that being said though, like I think maintaining friend groups outside of law is also equally
Oh, yeah.
important.
Mm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because like it's very easy to get stuck in the circle of law school.
Yes.
And then like once you interact with people outside, you realize oh the world's a much bigger place. There's so much more to life than the law.
Yeah.
And like then it really helps you to keep maybe it helps you to keep sight of the bigger picture. Yeah, and really it's pretty refreshing to get different viewpoints
Yeah.
on how people from maybe different courses think, how students from different courses think, and their experiences in uni as well.
Nicole,
Yeah.
how have you found that, like being in CAPT, and I guess out of all of us having the most exposure to like non-law people in uni, like do you think that has, I guess, widened your perspective in any way?
I guess so in a sense. I think like what Noel said, it's quite easy to get like trapped in like this like law like circle, which is like not necessarily a bad thing as well lah, but I think sometimes like we are like kind of isolated also from like the Cambridge campus.
Yeah.
So I think that only like compounds that feeling further. So I think like talking to people from different courses and like understanding like what their course is like, what they study, I think it's quite like interesting as well, and to hear like what their struggles are, even though they may not exactly face the same struggles that we do. Like maybe they have like other obstacles that they face as well. Yeah, so I think always good to make friends outside of law school. Yes.
And I guess we can say now that that can be through hall, it could be through RC, it could also be through, I guess, various like other NUS CCAs.
It can be even through like activities outside of university. Like there's really a lot more to life than school or university in general.
Yeah.
Actually, how have you guys found it easy to, I guess, maintain the friendships that you've had before uni? I guess because the workload being so tough and like a lot. Have you guys found that maintaining those friendships before has it become like harder and stuff?
I think for me, it's been okay. Because the way I usually keep like a small circle of friends that I know from like JC or like secondary school, maybe for example. Then like and like all of us usually make the effort to meet up and keep in touch and everything like that. So and like I guess I would say my friends are quite like low maintenance also lah. So like we can just maybe meet up after a while and like talk as if nothing, as if we are like still in the same place, you know, and stuff like that. So like I think it's definitely possible. That being said, I think the time that you spend with them will definitely be reduced lah, because like you guys are on different paths in life right now. But that's it, it's still possible to keep in touch and maintain friends. And I would say that I would advise the freshies also to not lose sight of their friends outside of law school as well. Yeah.
Yeah, agreed. I think it was a bit of a struggle for me initially, I think, especially like Sem 1, when like you're first like adjusting to how intense like the workload is here. Like then you feel like, wow, I really don't have any time but like to do my readings, that kind of like overwhelming feeling. So I think it was definitely tough to like keep up with like all my old friends. But I think at the same time, having less time also means you are more intentional with what you choose to do.
Right.
So the time that you have, you really like set it aside like purposefully to say like, oh okay, like this 2 hours I'm going to meet my friend for dinner, and I won't think about like LARC or contracts for that 2 hours. Yeah, and then I think that also makes you more like deliberate. Yeah.
For me, I guess I've been pretty lucky because my friends from I've mainly 2 groups of friends outside of law school, which is probably the same as Noel and Nicole and Christabel, which is basically from like secondary school and JC. I've been very lucky in the sense that my secondary school friends all play video games to a certain extent, so it is very easy for us to meet up because it's online, and like every Friday and Saturday night we will just play together for 5-6 hours, and that's more than enough interaction for 1 week generally. So yeah, and I've known these people for like close to 10 years at this point, so it is very natural for us to not meet up for a very long time and then come together, and it feels like nothing has changed in the past year or so. So I've been very lucky in that sense, and then it feels the same way for my JC friends who I'm very close with. I have like maybe 6 or 7 very close friends from JC, and although we don't meet up as often because of university and whatnot, right? Every time we meet up, it feels like nothing has, like no time has passed. It feels like we have just continued on from the previous time that we have met. So in that sense, I think I've been very lucky, and I'm probably an edge case, but yeah, I feel that your friends should understand that you are busy, and I mean busy with uni work and whatnot. So I don't think it is I don't think it's that bad to an extent where they'll be like, oh, you're not going to be your friends anymore because you're too busy to meet us or whatever. And if you do have friends who are like that, I don't think you should be friends with them, but yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I think, of course, for most of our experiences, like honestly, law school in year 1, like the main challenge that most of us face is adjusting to the wall of information that's thrown at you, and like processing everything, getting used to the rigor of the law, and like I don't know, like legal skills and all that stuff. So it's very easy to get overwhelmed because the learning curve might be quite steep at the start. So like as mentioned just now, like really taking the effort to meet your friends outside of the law circle is a very refreshing experience, and it's something that will keep you grounded also.
Yep.
So you don't lose sight of your life outside of the law school.
Yeah. Thanks, guys. So I guess just to wrap up the podcast, do you all have any general advice when it comes to, I guess, making friends in law school, since this is what the podcast is about? Do you all have any general advice or tips that you want to share with the freshies?
Yeah, I think in general, just put yourself out there. Don't be afraid to get to know more people. Yeah, and maybe like, I mean, there are kind of like interest groups around law school as well. They can join to kind of like expose yourself to new things. So like for example, like Sean and I kind of do like we play like frisbee outside with a few other law school friends, and it's really good because like for me and personally, I feel like people bond really well through like sports and stuff like that.
Yep.
And it's a very good way to de-stress also, because after a long week, like we usually meet on like Friday nights to play, and then really de-stress, talk, like even talk to seniors about like year 1 and stuff like that. So like it's really comforting and really really refreshing to find yourself this sort of interest/support group in law school. Yeah, so I think that's another avenue where you guys can look to form new friendships. Yeah.
Nicole?
I guess what I would say is just like be open to making friends. Yeah, I think you can like find friends almost anywhere. Like you can sit next to somebody in class and start talking to them, and then they could like be your friend because you see them every week after that. So I think just don't close yourself off too early, and yeah, just be open to meeting new people and making new connections.
For me, it's just be a kind person. Don't be nasty to people, and basically treat others how you would like to be treated, and generally people will reciprocate how you treat them. Yeah. And that's how you make friends / survive law school.
Yeah. I think I would also echo what Nicole said about being open. I think it's very important. And I just want to say thank you guys for coming down today. And thank you for the freshies for listening in, and we hope to see you next week when we discuss subclubs and interest groups that you can join or maybe interested in joining, whether that to be to make new friends or just try new things. And do keep a lookout on the NUS Law Orientation Instagram for a chance to ask us any questions, whether that may be in general or specifically to Noel or Nicole. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.